Shalom, good evening. This is TV7 Israel News, broadcast to you from Jerusalem. And in today's top stories, Israel increasingly faces domestic turmoil in light of an evident refusal by separate, somewhat marginal sectors of society that blatantly refuse to adhere to the government-enacted nationwide lockdown. Israeli Prime Minister Beniamin Netanyahu highlights cautious optimism about the trend of corona-related morbidity throughout the Jewish state. During the annual priestly blessing by believed descendants of the biblical priests in Jerusalem, the chief rabbi of the Western Wall, in the presence of U.S. Ambassador to Israel David Friedman, recited a special prayer for U.S. President Donald Trump's recovery. Israel increasingly faces domestic turmoil in light of an evident refusal by separate, somewhat marginal sectors of society that blatantly refuse to adhere to the government-enacted nationwide lockdown, which was implemented as part of Jerusalem's bid to curb an uncontrollable spread of the corona contagion throughout the Jewish state. The Israeli Health Ministry published its latest accumulated data, confirming yet another rise in morbidity, including 2,905 individuals that tested positive as carriers of the disease, which accounts for 11.7% of all tests conducted. Furthermore, there are currently 878 individuals hospitalized in serious condition, while separately, 1,719 Israelis succumbed to the so-called coronavirus. It is important to know that the most afflicted sector within Israel's diverse society is the ultra-Orthodox sector. According to the Israeli government's project director, who is in charge of all that pertains to combating the pandemic, from all those afflicted, approximately 40% are from the ultra-Orthodox sector, which represents, according to Israel's Bureau of Statistics, only about 10.1% of the Jewish population living in the state. According to informed sources who asked to remain anonymous due to the sensitivity of this issue, the obstinate attitude projected by the ultra-Orthodox sector is rooted in growing distrust among many rabbis who are evidently concerned over the multiple ramifications that emerged in light of the government-enacted closure. Therefore, despite the high morbidity among the ultra-Orthodox sector, many synagogues and religious seminary institutions have remained open in defiance of the law of the land. Consequently, police forces were deployed in the predominantly ultra-Orthodox Jerusalem neighborhood of Mea Shearim and the cities of Bnei Brak and Beitar Illit to enforce the lockdown. However, upon arrival, the officers were met by thousands of ultra-Orthodox individuals who sought to violently obstruct the police operation.
Police units dealt with disturbances that took place both in Jerusalem in the ultra-religious neighborhoods as well as in Bnei Brak, where our units responded to disturbances when roads were blocked and also stones thrown at officers. As a result, 2 officers were injured lightly and treated at the scene. We made over 40 arrests, and police activities will continue throughout this week in order to prevent illegal gatherings and prevent the spread of COVID-19.
Regrettably, riots were not exclusive to the ultra-Orthodox sector. Following months of weekly demonstrations in Jerusalem against the incumbent Israeli government and its Prime Minister, Beniamin Netanyahu, the parliament, or Knesset in Hebrew, approved a government-backed edict banning Israelis from holding demonstrations more than 1 kilometer or 0.6 miles from their homes as part of corona-related restrictive measures for the public sphere. The measure was immediately lambasted by protest leaders and politicians alike as a political tool to frustrate growing anti-government sentiments among the general Israeli public. Among others, Israeli Tourism Minister Asaf Zamir rendered his resignation explaining, quote, "My conscience does not allow me to stay in a government that prevents de facto protests," while further condemning the Israeli Prime Minister for the latest developments, quote, "Even at its most difficult time, Netanyahu runs the country according to his own political interests." Subsequently, in defiance of the restrictions, thousands of Israelis held anti-government protests in dozens of communities throughout the country, including in the Israeli city of Tel Aviv.
I'm here in a limited demonstration because we have one huge dictatorship. We have a Caesar who sees the flames of Israel and he doesn't care about anything. He doesn't care about more than 1 million people who are unemployment according to his behavior. He destroyed almost everything of our democracy, of our society. Because of him we are crying every night, and I'm here for my children and for my grandchildren, so help me God.
I came here to protest against the government. There's the coronavirus and everything. They're trying to take this as an excuse to make us silent. We won't be silent. We have the masks, we have social distancing. Everything is okay. We came here to give our voices, and that's it.
While it is important to clarify that most of the demonstrations were held in accordance with the government's restrictive measures, a number of protests in the city of Tel Aviv refused to heed the law, forcing police officers to break up the demonstrations by force. Meanwhile, in Jerusalem, Israeli Prime Minister Beniamin Netanyahu updated the nation via video recording at a time when Jews and Gentiles alike are biblically called, per the book of Leviticus, chapter 23, verses 33 and 34, and separately, verses 40 to 43, to celebrate for 7 days unto the Lord.
אזרחי ישראל, חג שמח. אני כמוכם חגגתי את חג הסוכות קצת שונה מתמיד. זה חג סוכות בלי אושפיזין. אני יודע, זה שונה, אבל אני מבקש מכולם, חרדים וחילונים כאחד, לשמור על ההנחיות.
Netanyahu further insisted that the general nationwide lockdown was not aimed at any individual or sector, but rather it serves to stem the spread of the corona contagion.
הנחיות הסגר הם לא נגדכם, הם נגד הנגיף. ואם נפעל כולנו יחד, אנחנו מנצחים את הנגיף הזה.
The Israeli premier went on to address statements by several experts that had voiced cautious optimism vis-a-vis the trends of morbidity, which directly impacts decision-making in all that pertains to the nationwide shutdown.
עכשיו, יש כאלה שכבר אומרים שיש להם אופטימיות זהירה, שהסגר כבר מתחיל לעבוד, לעשות שיטוח של עקומת הגדילה. אני יותר זהיר מהזהירים. אני רוצה לחכות לפחות שיעברו 10 ימים, לפחות 10 ימים. זה אומר שאת ההחלטות על המשך הסגר אחרי מוצאי שמחת תורה, אנחנו נקבל רק ביום חמישי.
In other yet related news, after U.S. President Donald Trump announced that both he and his wife contracted the corona contagion, Israeli supporters of the American leader hung huge billboards throughout the city of Tel Aviv, calling on God to bless the presidential couple.
I think it's a wonderful thing. I think it's really important that we keep all of our sick in mind, and President Trump, I hope he has a speedy recovery.
אני מאחלת לדונלד טראמפ ולמלניה טראמפ שיהיו בריאים ושכולנו נחזור בחזרה לשגרה.
Meanwhile, in Jerusalem, during the annual priestly blessing, or Birkat HaKohanim, by believed descendants of the biblical priests, the chief rabbi of the Western Wall, in the presence of U.S. Ambassador to Israel David Friedman, recited a special prayer for President Trump.
מי שברך לנשיא ארצות הברית ונתפלל לרפואתו ולהצלחתו. מי שברך אבותינו אברהם, יצחק ויעקב, משה, אהרון, דוד ושלמה. הוא ישלח רפואה לדונלד ג'ון בן פרד בעבור שאנו מתפללים בעבורו. מסחר זה הקדוש ברוך הוא, ימלא רחמים עליו, להחלימו, לרפאותו, להחזיקו ולהחיותו, וישלח לו מהירה רפואה שלמה מן השמיים, לרמ"ח איבריו ושס"ה גידיו בתוך שאר חולי ישראל, רפואת הנפש ורפואת הגוף, השתה בעגלה בזמן קריב, ונאמר אמן.
Ambassador Friedman, who attended the festive ceremony as a special guest, stressed the importance of prayer during these terrible times.
There's one thing you can't do too much of right now. It's to pray for the health of the entire world. I was able to have the privilege to pray at this holy place, to pray for people that I know very well who are afflicted with corona, and people who I don't know at all who are afflicted by corona. And I wish all of them refuah shlema, a complete and speedy recovery.
Thank you for watching us. As part of TV7's prayer initiative, I would like to encourage you today to join myself and the team here in Jerusalem to pray for the United States and its leader, President Donald Trump, as well as for all leaders of our respective nations for their salvation and peace. In addition to our ongoing prayers, of course, for the peace of Jerusalem, the salvation of Israel, and for all those who are impacted by the corona contagion and its economic ramifications worldwide. I would also like to thank our partners for your dedicated support for TV7's ministry here in Jerusalem, both by means of prayer and finance. Your contributions and spiritual backing are a vital lifeline for all of our operations. I'm Jonathan Hassan wishing you a Shavua Tov and Chag Sukkot Sameach, and we will see you again tomorrow at the same time.
Alfa